there's my first introductory slide there. A lot of the people I know that are on the meeting don't know me, so I was flattered that Don asked me to do this. So here's some of my qualifications here. And this is interesting. I'm having you overlap on my notes. So let me gotta move this over so I can see myself. Okay. Anyway, uh, I ran the state park effort, which was just a effort. It was like 40 or 50 efforts. So my major one was in Jefferson City uh, for the 2017 eclipse. And you also will see my wife's name on stuff I'm using because she was at the doing the St. Clair, Missouri Get Your Eclipse on Route 66 event. So anyway, we'll get on into things here. Trish did send out a list of links in the emails, and I just set out an updated version this morning. So, you know, it, and by golly, it should now say 23, but it still says 22. Okay. Anyway, the other thing on there uh, is it's updated because there were some dead links and I added some. But the other thing on there, which is important, is this link here, which is to a Dropbox folder, which is labeled For Don Ficken. And it's got all the resource materials I'm talking about today. So, including all the updated stuff that I've just done, I think. Anyway, getting on there. This is probably the most valuable one in there. I call it the Eclipse handout, but it's a compilation of everything that's happened in the last 8 years that we put together in terms of how to talk to people about the eclipse and so forth. And so let's just start on one of the things you can do. And there's a solar system trail. This is, once it's set up, you just leave it because it's a self-guiding thing. Uh, this little guy may not seem like he's paying a lot of attention, but he has been reading those cards there. In 2017 at the Capitol, we set up a trail along High Street using an inflatable solar system and cards from NASA, which we had printed and laminated. And there's our friend exploring Venus. And you can see here's the sun, Mercury, Venus, there's Earth and the moon, and in the back there you can just make out Mars. It continues on to Pluto and the Kuiper Belt. And while the planets are not to scale, the distance between them on the trail is to scale. So that's something that not exactly related to the eclipse, but it's an astronomy activity that people could do, and it was quite popular. We've been talking a lot about eclipse food for sale in the event. Well, some of these can also be used for activities. Patsy Rubin pointed out the Oreo eclipse. However, of course, you can do the same with any chocolate cookie and even add a vanilla cookie. And maybe you could get by with one cookie if you use a duplex cream, but anyway. And the same thing can be done with moon pies. There are many moon pies which come in 5 flavors, and I find the chocolate, vanilla, and banana the most useful. You can pair vanilla and chocolate or banana and chocolate, and bingo, you've got eclipses again. My local grocery store sells a box of 6 for $1.25. So we put together one of each color, and boom, we had eclipse kits of moon pies. And while we're on things edible, how about an edible pinhole camera? Everything's better when it sits on a Ritz, including an Eclipse.
Very good.
Yeah. And well, yes, you can do it with high hose. Before we leave the kitchen, though, one of Joe's favorite things is what you can do with a kitchen colander. Every little hole in the colander becomes a pinhole camera. And if there are trees around your event, the shadows, tree shadows, become a kaleidoscope of pinhole camera images. And speaking of pinhole cameras, have a craft booth for people to make their own pinhole camera. There are many designs on the web, so you can just pick one that suits you. We had staff saving empty boxes for weeks before the 2017 eclipse, and then all it needed was a ream of paper, a roll of aluminum foil, some tape, and a pen. Trish brought up the sundial or sun clock. I'd forgotten about this, so it's still in that folder on the Dropbox, but it's all by itself. Uh, it's Making a Sun Clock is the name of the full file. The instructions on it have 3 different clocks varying by latitude. There's also a file called the Missouri Sun Clock file, which I did with where they're all 3 the same for Missouri. And you can just run them off on cardstock and cut them apart. And then you're talking about tape and a spool of thread. To work, they do need to be pointed north and south. And yes, I've got those arrows on the cards. I really haven't had any preschoolers at my programs, but the Astronomical Society of the Pacific has some preschool activities, and this link is in the list of links. And shadow bands, we had Dr. Paskin speak to us in October. I will mention this video has been enhanced. The effect is actually even more subtle, but it's an easy setup, and I'm sure Dr. Paskin would appreciate the data. And the spectroscope kit is being discontinued, but it's still available from Astronomers Without Borders. And right now they are giving away packs of 25 for free with a January 29th deadline. In addition, there are other designs on the web. Some are similar, using a serial box and diffraction grating, and others use a scrap CD. The links for this are on the list, and the people do have an interest in the sun spectrum, but a big warning is never use a spectroscope to look directly at the sun. Point it at a white surface instead. I noted that the instructions for the one this kid is using say to point it at the sky, but I prefer to avoid the possibility that one pointed at the sky will accidentally wind up pointed toward the sun. And we mentioned over the months the yardstick eclipse. It's very popular, and one reason is for its accurate representation. It is built to scale. And since this is to scale, the participants get a real feel for just how difficult it is for everything to line up perfectly. But when it does, the moon's shadow is visible on the Earth. Mentioned this doesn't happen easily. To relieve the participants' frustration, you can move the moon closer to the Earth and move it farther out as he or she gets the hang of it. But I'd advise not to start with it easy, because one of the things you're trying to get across is that alignment is difficult. It doesn't happen often. For yourself, if you want to look really skillful, the trick to this is to look at the shadow on the ground and move the stick around to minimize the shadow. And that gets the stick pointed directly at the sun, and uh, you're very close to getting that eclipse. And if you've seen the close-ups, but you may have noticed I don't use white earth balls. I've thrown them out on a newspaper and lightly sprayed them with green and blue so that although I'm not reproducing the continents, they look something like the Earth from space. And yes, I use meter sticks, and my uh, thing is in meters. But anyway, the moon is a 1 inch ball. Excuse me, the Earth is a 1 inch ball, and the moon is a 6 or 7 inch bead. And in my handout, the distances are in millimeters. However, the kit instructions are in inches, but some people are briefly confused because the instructions say to put the two 30 Earth diameters apart. However, the Earth is 1 inch, so that's 30 inches. The activity with hoops is really popular, often with a line of people waiting to take part going, now me, now me. It was designed using hula hoops, but what I went ahead and made my own because I wanted the hoop material to be thinner and the diameter of the hoops to be larger. There are two parts to the activity. In the first, you put a person in the center of the hoop. They are the Earth in the center of the moon's orbit. On the hoop is a Sitchet styrofoam ball. That's the moon. While the instructions use a lamp indoors, outside we use the real sun. You have the participants wear eclipse glasses or an eclipse viewer, and then you move the moon in its orbit until its shadow covers the person's eyes. Hey, they have an eclipse. One thing is to, of course, be sure that they keep their eye protection in place until they look away from the sun. The second part uses two hoops. One represents the path of the sun in the sky and the other the path of the moon. The places where these two cross are called the nodes. The point being made is that an eclipse can only occur when the sun and the moon occupy the nodes. If they are at the same node, it's a solar eclipse. If they are at opposite nodes, it's a lunar eclipse. And this isn't just always for children. I actually got these hoops out to answer a solar expo question from an adult about the difference in the direction between the paths of the 2017 eclipse and the 2024 eclipse. Solar eclipses always move generally west to east. However, in 2017, the moon was on a descending node, and its shadow moved from northwest to southeast. This time, we have to look at the other one. Come on. Whoop. And the shadow is moving from southwest to northeast. You may have heard of the music of the spheres. This is the dance of the spheres. And of course, this isn't really much to scale either. We use a 65 millimeter yellow exercise ball for the sun. One to scale would be huge. And then an inflatable earth ball becomes the Earth. I like the 16-inch ones, but 12-inch ones are more common. And I usually use a white softball or 4-inch styrofoam ball for the moon. I do try to keep them in proportion. So for a 12-inch, that would be a 3-inch ball. You choose 3 people from the audience and give each a ball, and then have them move to mimic the motion of the sun, Earth, and moon. And if you paint one side of the moon black, you can even mimic the phases of the moon. With participants lined up in the sun, moon, Earth, you are ready for a solar eclipse. You can demonstrate why eclipses are not so common by having the moon person move the moon up and down. It's like the three bears. Mostly the moon is too high or too low, but rarely it's just right. You can also do the same thing with a lunar eclipse because the same thing happens. The moon is too high or too low, but sometimes it is just right. If you want to demonstrate the phases of the moon, you can have the moon person orbit the Earth, keeping the white, that would be the lit side of the moon, toward the sun, and have the Earth person report what they see. And you can also demonstrate why we only see one side of the moon, an effect called tidal coupling. Having the moon person, and you can substitute the sun person if you want. They've just been standing still most of the time, but have them spread their arms and tell everyone to imagine that his or her right arm is one edge of the moon and the left the other edge. Then have them turn and face the Earth. And you can explain how something that moves faster moves farther out in its orbit, and then have the person turn slightly. You can point out that the hand farther from the Earth is moving at the same speed as the person's body, and that's not fast enough for an orbit that far out. So gravity will pull it back in. At the same time, the other hand is near the Earth and it's moving too fast for that low of an orbit, and so it is pushed away, and thus the moon is locked, and one side must always face the Earth. Then have the person orbit the Earth always facing it, and point out that although the moon always faces the Earth, the direction which it faces with regard to everything else is always changing. The moon does rotate, but it takes one whole orbit to turn completely around. Thus, it always keeps the same size toward the Earth. You can take this a step further and demonstrate the seasons by having the Earth person tilt it. Then have him or her orbit the sun. The tricky part about this is that the person has this annoying tendency to keep pointing the tilt toward the sun. So you need to tell them to point it towards some object in the distance behind the sun. And then as they go around, you'll have the North Pole sometimes pointed toward the sun when that's the summer solstice. Away is the winter solstice. And of course, in between are the vernal autumnal equinoxes. And that defines the four seasons. And this is, we had an area set off, roped off to do this in 2017. You can see there's some people here getting ready to do the dance. We also had done this earlier at a harvest festival in 2016, and Scholastic Books was there with their mascot, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and so we got him into the act. On the actual day of the eclipse, Big Old Tire had their mascot, Bigfoot, there, and we had him going around wearing eclipse glasses. So, if you've got a local high school, community college, or other mascot who might attend your event, you can do something like this. We were lucky with Bigfoot in that the actual eye holes for the costume were not the actual eyes of the Bigfoot, because it was much taller. So the glasses could be on and the person could still find their way around. And if you don't have a mascot, you could always make your own. I do have links for these costumes on the list. We had the Fort Leonard Wood band there, but you know, if you can get the local high school band or something, that would be great. You could get them practicing now. We had the tried to stay with Eclipse or at least astronomy based songs. They played Gustav Holst's The Planet Suite. And while you do have to be mindful of copyrights, I think some great songs are Cat Stevens' Moonshadow. And right when totality ends, I would love to have a band playing Here Comes the Sun or Let the Sun Shine. I think Here Comes the Sun. Uh, Local celebrities for our MCs. And you can probably get some local celebrities, local elected officials are probably would be tickled pink. This is an election year. And I'll mention one other song that kept coming up in 2017, though we didn't use it, was Total Eclipse of the Heart. Um, One idea that we didn't get to do was a car show. I still think that has some value because we were going to give a special prize to anyone who showed up with a Mitsubishi Eclipse. So that's kind of the end of what I have to say. About, of course, above all, safety is the number one priority. Protect the eyes.
Okay, super.
And I'm trying to unshare my screen, but these, oh, there it is. There we go.
Okay.
So, any,
Okay. Yeah, does anybody have any questions for Eugene? That was a lot of good stuff.
It was.
Thank you.
All right.